Hello and welcome to a special interview edition of Adult Music. This is our 6th interview, Mike.
Yeah, and this one features the Swedish composer that we spoke about a few weeks ago, Niklas Sivelöv. We thought of him as a composer, but he's informed us that he he seems to do everything.
Yeah, Sivelöv has an impressive discography of recordings. He's recorded Bach, Beethoven, Schumann, Stenhammer, Englund, Scriabin.
As a pianist, yeah, because he's a pianist as well.
And then he's recorded his own compositions, 24 preludes and his own concertos. And then on top of that, he's a symphonist now.
His works are pretty big and impressive.
Yeah, we were really impressed, which is why we wanted to talk to him. And so he's got 6 symphonies completed, the 7th in progress, and we talked about the latest recording of those.
Yeah, if you listened to our talk about his Symphonies 1 and 5 from a previous episode, we go into a little detail about the separate movements of that with him, so he'll illustrate them a little bit for you. If you're looking for a little bit more of an insight into what's happening in those works, you'll enjoy this.
Hopefully the second one is going to be recorded soon. That will be interesting to hear. Now, on top of all of those things, he's also done some interesting things sort of outside of the classical box. He's recorded improvised music with traditional Chinese instruments and Chinese musicians. And he's also made a recording of pop and jazz type music with improvisations on both piano and organ, which was his original instrument. We really had a good time in this interview because Niklas was really easy to talk to and very open-minded.
Very eager to talk about his music, too, which was also nice.
Yeah.
We were very impressed by him as well, too. He seems to have accomplished quite a lot.
So sit back, relax, and please enjoy our interview with Niklas Sivelöv. Thanks for joining us, Niklas.
Thanks for the invitation.
Our pleasure.
I think the first question we want to ask you is the pronunciation of your family name. There's an umlaut over the O. Is it Sivelöv?
Yeah, in Swedish we say Sivelöv, but I'm used to having Sivelöv or something like this in outside Sweden. And actually, I played quite much before the pandemic situation in China. I got a Chinese name because they had problems with spelling and pronunciation of my name. So I am Sivelöv.
Sivelöv.
Yeah, and it has a meaning. It's 3 words, actually, Sivelöv. And I think it has to do with something with balance and beauty. There's something about it, but it should also be a reminder of my original name. So it's quite cool.
Did you actually get to see the Chinese characters for it?
Yes, I've seen them, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't learned to spell them yet myself, but I've seen them, yeah.
It can be complicated.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get musical. We were doing a little bit of research on you. It says you were born in the northern Sweden, which I imagine was very cold and very dark in the winter. Was there much music up there when you were younger?
Actually, we have quite a lot of music up there.
Wow.
Because we have a long tradition of choirs, and also there's a lot of churches with music. There's also a number of churches. They all have music, also, gospel and other kind of church music, and the music school and the music gymnasium was very popular. So I went both to the music school, I played percussion and piano. And before that, I had started with the organ by myself because I liked it. And I just, I played by ear. So I didn't even read score. I couldn't read notes when I was younger. I guess the long and dark winters, they are kind of boring, but it also can inspire you to do things because there's not much to do except winter sports. I mean, I played hockey for a long time. I was quite active in the hockey team until I was 14, maybe 15.
Wow.
Everyone played hockey. It's really a hockey town. And they have a great team. They won the Swedish championships many times. And they have a lot of players from overseas, from Canada and America. Skellefteå is quite amazing because it's growing so much as a town. They have a new culture house now. It's the largest wooden building in the world.
Oh,
and
wow.
Skellefteå was actually on the Time magazine top 20 list where to visit in the world.
Sweden, wow, okay.
So my little town is growing, but it's always been a lot of music around, and also in my home. My dad played the piano as an amateur, and for fun, he played boogie-woogies and a little bit classical. And my mother, she sang in one of those choirs.
Now, did you have an organ at home, or did you have to go to a church to play, or?
Both. I had an organ at home, and we also had a piano, but I didn't touch the piano so much until I was around 12. I liked the organ more. because of the different registrations, and you had, you know, you could make different sounds. And, you know, I didn't play the piano actually at all until I was around 11, 12. I started to get curious about this instrument. And but I also went to a church sometimes to play on the church organ. So
you'd improvise on the church organ?
I mainly improvised. I was very into Beatles. I liked Beatles a lot, and I played all their songs. And I composed my own songs from the age of 8. I had my own radio show locally there. When I was 9, I presented several my own little tunes. You know, I didn't know how to notate them, but I had composed with harmonies. I had learned myself how to make harmonies, and so this was quite a good school. I mean, it was not organized. It was not. I did many things I didn't know. I was self-taught, but I used my ears so much, and I had, you know, I had a creative side to, you know, explore. So it came later, the need for learning to read the score properly, because I tried to play a Mozart concerto. I think it was number 13 from ear. And you can, of course, do it, but it's quite complicated to always hear what is actually there, you know, and you hear the orchestra also. So I thought this is quite practical. You want to play with others, you know, and I had a new teacher also that inspired me. So, of course, he was shocked. You cannot read. I could read, but very, very slowly. And I had also some kind of resistance for this, because I didn't want to play just, you know, the notes and correctly. I wanted to play more freely, which is a good thing. But, of course, this is what you learn to do later. Combination.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have an organ question for you later, so I'll keep that in my pocket until then. Yeah.
Well, anyway, what surprised us about you, because we learned about you as a symphonist, as a composer, but you had mentioned that you consider yourself to be a pianist first. You think of yourself more as a pianist. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, because I played the piano for a very long time, and composing symphonies, it came much later.
Right.
It was also, it had to do with the pandemic situation, but I started before to explore symphony, the symphony structure. But it was not like a commission, or I thought this will be played at all. Just, I was curious what I could do with the orchestra and how to make good orchestration. I'm not totally self-taught there. I had lessons when I was a student in Stockholm, but I never really... I composed piano concertos before with orchestra, but I wanted to explore things without the piano.
Okay.
So that made me really explore, and I got inspired, and I started to compose several symphonies, and then I met a friend, a new colleague, conductor, Joachim Gustafsson, and...
Who conducted the... current Naxos recording.
He did it, and you know, he looked into my music, and he was, wow, this is really great. I hadn't shown it to anyone almost, you know. I was doing it for myself merely, and I was not very active. But he asked, "What about your symphonies?" And I sent them to him, and he liked them so much, so he recorded. He has recorded now. Let me see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 symphonies, and the 5 pieces for strings.
I've listened to all of those. Has the second been recorded?
No, the second has not been recorded. That's a huge thing.
Oh, really?
Sounds interesting. I want to get back to that. Symphonies. Maybe we'll start with a little more piano. Lots of pianists specialize in a period or a certain composer, but you've done so much in a very wide range. You've recorded Bach, Beethoven, Schumann, Stenhammer, Englund, Scriabin. And then the easiest for me to approach of your own works was your piano music recording on Toccata in 2015. It's just solo piano. And there seem to be a lot of influences in there. Of course, I can hear Bach, but I noticed also maybe Prokofiev in some of the more modern things. And there's in the impromptu, you have a little kind of a nod to Satie, I think, in there that's obvious. But obviously, a lot of your own character coming out in there. How do you see the mix of composers that you've performed kind of mixing with your own ideas in there? Do you see any more particular influences that draw you one way or another? Because there's quite a lot of variety in those works on that recording.
I'm surely very influenced of many composers. Stravinsky, I heard that people mention, and Prokofiev also. Also French music, which I played very much as a young pianist. I'm not too scared about, sounding a little bit, having influences. I think it's very natural. You should, of course, end up doing something personal anyhow. So it doesn't become pastiche. And I think also my piano concertos have the same thing. And I'm very aware of this fact. And I enjoy writing in styles that are being used, but with a certain twist, So I think at least it seems to some reviewers, they say exactly that you can hear the influences. But at the end of the day, Sivelöv is very much his own man, because I twist it in a way so it's not just Stravinsky.
Sure.
Right. It's something there, and I'm allowing this, and it's also kind of tribute, I think, to great masters. And I don't know, it's through history, it's been something like this. We have both a difficult but also a great situation now that we have such a long tradition of great music composed.
Right.
My own philosophy is that it should be looked upon, and incorporated in your music making. And I think just that I'm born in this century, and I'm born in Sweden, I will be personal enough,
Sure.
I'm not afraid of being, like it's a copy or something, but it should be original, But on the other hand, it's music that's tried too much to be original. In my view, can it be a risk that it misses the point somehow, and it doesn't communicate something very clear?
Sure.
Because it becomes something that you have thought about. It's a great thought, But music is very organic also. It's all connected.
Yeah.
So that's both a great thing, but also a difficult thing. How to make something new with only those notes we have to use.
I'm curious about your process. When you compose, do you start with a concept or an idea, maybe non-musical, that inspires you? I remember in the Naxos note, you wrote a jazz ballad about your cat.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you compose for piano or otherwise, do you have like a melody idea that strikes you first, or do you tend to work from a harmonic progression or sceneries of tone? I'm just curious as what your original process for approaching compositions is.
I have an idea, which is both musical and structure idea. I want to make something so I don't repeat myself. So it's like the first symphony is very Nordic. Second symphony is the myth of Sisyphus. It has with this, rolling the stone up. And I read this novel by Albert Camus, which he also describes this process. And I wanted to write something repetitive, use a little bit minimalistic influences. And so it's not Nordic, second one. Third one, it's a part of a little season cycles I have, because it's the spring symphony. But it's, again, a little bit Nordic, but I wanted to do it for chamber orchestra and something more, less demanding, not so long. So that's the spring symphony. And then came the fourth, which is for strings, and it's very much dealing with passacaglia and variation techniques. And I'm trying to be a little bit, I put the theme towards the end. Don't start with the theme, but I have variations, and then the theme comes clearly only in the end. And these kind of things I was doing in the fourth symphony. And then in fifth symphony, I thought this with three movements. I wanted to do two movements, which are kind of like a diptych. They are really connected, like two panels.
Right.
And they don't even contrast that much. And I thought that's a challenge, because it will be boring. It will be monotonous, but it came out quite good, I think, anyhow, because there is some relation between two siblings still, twin. I have twin sisters, so maybe there's something to it. And the sixth symphony has not been played, but there I wanted to do a lot of little episodes with chamber music and a lot of solistical things. And this is the Autunno di Ferro. It's the iron fall, or autumn of iron. It was also lockdowns and pandemic things. And it was just the autumn of iron.
I see.
It has some symphonic ideas, which is more grand, but it's very difficult. It has a lot of soloists playing and difficult little episodes with chamber music. And then the seventh symphony, that is the winter. And this is going to be a large-scale symphony. And I think it feels like this is one of my best pieces. I don't know. It's not finished yet, but that's the winter piece. It's about the Arctic, and there is some very both dark but also optimistic light. There's some light, bright light, but it's quite dark. It's winter. And then the summer is missing, but then I have the Divertimento for orchestra that I wrote, which is very light and humoristic work. So that's the summer. So I'm soon will complete this unofficial seasons series.
Yeah, this sounds like a massive project. Many of the great composers of the past were pianists. And I often think about Beethoven, who started as a pianist and later was only composing, but that was because of his deafness. I wonder if you see yourself moving more towards composition.
I don't think so. I'm actually playing more than ever. And I also feel like it's been a quite healthy break, from playing in concerts because of COVID. And then it's been 2 years. And I'm actually feeling that I have more to say than ever on the stage. So I won't lose that. But I'm also a teacher. I'm also a guest teacher up in northern Sweden. And I also run my record company. The AMC is my own company. And then I have a family. I have 2 smaller kids. They are 9 and 11. And it means that my time is not, endless. So I usually I'm very efficient during the summer when I'm, not at the college. Then I compose most of my works in the Christmas or summer vacation. I cannot, sustain it if I'm going to. I think I have 15 students, and my own playing and traveling. Then I cannot sustain composing also, because composing is like, this is not something you can go. If I have 1 hour, I go to the piano and practice the next piece I'm going to play. But if I have 1 hour, I cannot start on the 7th symphony because it's kind of half finished. I cannot do it in 1 hour. If I get started, I will do only this. So that's why I need to have a substantial length of time at my disposal when I start the process. It can also be slow to start. Now I did so much with the 7th and, actual writing, then I still compose in my head. I still do things. And also with the new concerto for viola and orchestra I changed a lot because I started to think about it. So it's a constant thing, going on.
When you compose, would you say that you picture music like as a pianist, or is it more abstract than that? You just kind of hear sounds and...
I will tell you like this. Yeah, actually, when I play the piano, I think about the orchestra.
Okay.
I try to, make orchestration. I imagine different orchestras, especially Beethoven. Obviously, in Chopin, there is not so much orchestra, but there is more colors. But in general, I play a lot of Bach and Beethoven, and then especially Beethoven, you have the orchestral quality. And in Bach, of course, you have the organ quality, how to, make the sounds on the piano sound longer, sustained without the pedal, but just in your mind, and with your touch. Like pianists like Anders Schiff is doing, he use very little pedal and he can still play long notes. It comes from also thinking like an organ.
Interesting.
But anyway, I do think that my orchestral thinking was helping me, that I could actually compose so much symphonic music without having so much experience. And I did have knowledge about orchestration, but this is not something that I just use. I know this. I want to be creative, So the music and orchestration, they are, for me, it's not for all composers like this, but for me, they are really connected. I don't write kind of particelle. I write like a piano version and then I make orchestration. No, I compose from the beginning because depending on which instrument you have and which color you have, this is also making the character, not only the notes. It's like it's one process, for me.
Yeah, I was curious. Our first impression of your orchestral music was the Symphonies 1 and 5 recording. And so the thing that struck me was the rich use of the full timbres of the orchestra, particularly memorable and striking brass parts. Then also the sense of motion. I felt that your music moves in kind of scenes, but with interesting kinds of... It's not just rhythm. I use the word motion more in the way that parts start moving into the next sort of scape of sound with different colors. And I could detect kind of a Nordic Sibelius influence, but we like also Nielsen a lot and Van Hombo. Because I was a trumpet player originally, so I'm always waiting for the brass. And when I heard yours, I said, oh, there it is. I really like that. So this is just my imagination of someone composing at the piano and then these brass parts appear. So I wonder where you got those tone colors to just come out into the orchestra like that.
No, I am very grateful to Sibelius. You know, on a distance, I'm actually related to Sibelius.
Oh, wow.
You know, because my family came from Finland, and this is a certain branch of it. But I mean, there's many people in this. It's a big family, but it's still this family. And I always listen to Sibelius, and I also like his piano music. And I felt connected to the symphonic way. I like when he is kind of the way he's still using the orchestra, but maybe in a way that it's not like Mahler that said that one symphony must contain the whole world.
Right.
And Sibelius said, no, I don't agree. It's just a part of the world. And I feel connected to it. I don't want to say everything I can in one symphony. And I also allow sometimes very sparse writing. You know, maybe just solo flute and some timpani or something very. And, you know, when you create the space in the orchestra, you have also the distance. You use the distance, also the space, but also musically, that we can then appreciate. Okay, now comes another color. So this is very important for me. I was trying to be very clear that I'm not overusing, but just because I have an orchestra, I use them all the time too much. I'm not saying that it's a general thing, but I think it's absolutely a risk that you can, as a composer, that you're too eager to use the orchestra.
Right.
I mean, all of it, because now I can write for orchestra. So I think that maybe it is a kind of a good thing for me that I didn't compose it for a certain orchestra. I composed my first symphony only for myself, and not because thinking, oh, this is going to be played by this orchestra next year or this size. I just wanted to find a way for me to compose a symphony that I could say, this is not too bad, you know. This I managed to do some things I wanted to do. And then, of course, I explore with these things going in the finale. Some things are just, you know, repeating, and then there's things adding, and then comes this hymn, this choral, which grows and grows and doubles and doubles. And this is stretching it out, you know, almost you think, can you stretch it more? It will burst, you know. Some reviewers said that he's really stretching it too far, but still it was enjoyable. And I think it's on the edge. And then it ends with this just cluster chord, and then it snaps, you know, just this rubber band. But I learned from Sibelius, of course, with the brass very much. Yeah. And I think also to blend it with the timpani, to have this kind of forest-like sound. There's something, you know, in the background. There's some noise from the leaves. There's something. It's not quiet. People say, you go to the forest, it's quiet. No, it's not quiet. Start to listen. Yeah. The wind, the leaves rustling, there's some animals. It's quiet in a way, you know. It's not the city. But so I think maybe this is something Nordic.
I hear this in Sibelius' symphonies a lot, what you just said. The this kind of like this, there's all this sound, but it's very quiet. And I'm wondering is there a specific way that you would evoke that, for example, in the first symphony?
Well, I think the use of timpani and brass sometimes it can have this similar effect. I think mainly that, maybe some percussion sometimes. But of course, I had a very special program. For example, second movement is inspired from the painting The Scream by Edvard Munch. So it has a different intensity. And of course, you have the scream. And in the score, it says also silent scream that the conductor should do afterwards. Doesn't work very well in the recording. But still, it's not being performed live. But I think live this could be quite intense. But that's why in the recording we were discussing this place in the second movement. After the scream, and then comes a little bit more silent scream, and then comes this actually silent scream, which is silent. But then we had first just 3-4 seconds, you know. The producer said, "That's enough. We cannot have more silence, you know." But we must you must be brave. So we kept it totally silent for at least 5-6 seconds, which is quite much, you know. Because everyone is worried about that it's going to be silence, you know.
That's funny. So we live in Japan, and silence isn't really something you hear too much in Western music. Really, I think Debussy had that that moment of silence at the beginning of Prélude à l'après-midi d'enfant, and that shocked audiences, right, when they first heard it. And you still don't hear much of that, but in Japanese music, there's silence all the time, and they seem very comfortable with it. I'm curious about the silence at the end, the silent scream. I would think that in order for that to be effective, it sort of has to be led into what came before. Has there ever been a performance that has satisfied you as far as this goes?
No, it's never been performed live. It's only the recording. This symphony has not been played. That's my point. So in the recording, it's of course just we can only stretch the time, the silence of the time.
It's kind of hard to tell. Like if I hadn't read the note, I wouldn't know.
Of course. It's not also necessary to know. It's anecdote.
It should just be there.
Live, you can of course make it very dramatic. You can do, the conductor can make like this, and then no one plays. I don't know.
That could be interesting. Okay, so the Nordic Symphony, we're already talking about that. It says this was written at the time of the birth of your son. Was that's always a life-changing event for men and women both, but fathers and mothers. Was he part of the inspiration for the work?
I think so. I wanted to give birth to something also, because my wife was, doing all the hard work as a woman. Maybe I felt also need to do something out of the ordinary.
Right.
And I always actually been scared of writing symphonies. I didn't think I had it in me.
Yeah, this is your first symphony, right?
Yeah.
And
so I remember starting it, and I thought I will really challenge myself. So I just started. I had no idea this is going to be a Nordic symphony. I just started. I imagined something interesting. How should it begin? What is the first theme? I hadn't even decided that. I just made it, directly in the score. And then I listened and said, this is good. It just happened. And then it started to build. And then I had some ideas from another piece with this second movement and even the third movement. But the first movement, I had some ideas for what should come later. But the beginning I didn't have. And this is one of the first times I didn't, think about before starting to compose, just putting the notes there. Da-da-dum, da-da-dum. And then I just happened. I don't think it ever happened since that I just composed it like this, like getting it from like above. Maybe I was very inspired from this, having a child, my first child.
Right.
I don't know, this connection. Now I always have an idea, and then I start and I make some sketches, and never like this. It was the first only time.
When we did the podcast, I had mentioned that the first movement sounded very episodic, like it went from one scene to the next scene. And I'm just wondering, is there a structure that I'm missing there? Would you agree with that, or is there more to it?
There is a structure. Yeah. There is absolutely a structure.
Yeah, there would have to be.
It might sound episodic, but it has an introduction. Then it has the main theme, and then it has the second theme, and then it has a development section. And then it has a long transition with that, just chord lying there, and this comes this English horn, like an empty swan, over the lake. And then it's a recapitulation. And in the recapitulation, the second theme comes like very violently also. And then it ends with some of the second theme. So it has some, but maybe this, I don't know. There's a structure to it.
Right. So it sounds like you just described a sonata. So
yeah.
Like a sonata.
It's a kind of sonata, but it has a very important introduction also, which is not...
Right. Not part of the sonata.
And this introduction theme comes also at the end. All of this, it is the timpani. There's a rhythm, Okay, it's connected, but it's, of course, it's I don't know. It's some reviewers. Sometimes they wrote about my music. It's like a puzzle, but you're intrigued by listening again, and you find some more pieces to put together. And I agree that it could also be something a bit rhapsodic to my music. That it's I have many ideas. So especially my earlier pieces had many ideas, maybe too many. I managed to make it into something anyhow, and now with age, I try to be, maybe I don't have so many ideas anymore, or I try to use what I have more wisely. Next week, I'm going to make premiere of, I'm playing myself the solo part in Örebro, the Swedish Chamber Orchestra. We are doing my 6th piano concerto there, and it's going to be recorded also.
Oh,
fantastic.
And it has a subtitle. It's called Earth Rights, and not rights as women's rights. It's rights as
like the right of spring rights.
Right of spring. And then, because you mentioned, I don't remember when, but something about emotion in my music. And there is a right. The final right is a right of motion, and it's in 5/8.
Okay.
But this has rights. It has right of ascension, right of flight, right of anxiety, of old time, ancient time, right of ancient time, right of anxiety, and right of meditation, and right of motion. And I think it's the most programmatic piece I've written so far, because it has clearly a program, and it's inspired from the times we live in, and also this things that keeps us together, and what is human life, like an overall feel to. I mean, we need to, this uplifting first movement is the ascension, to lift the soul, and there's nothing religious to it. It's just that we are a little bit maybe I felt very much going down and pressed down, and I want to lift up. So this is exciting, and also because I managed to write 6 concertos for the piano, so that's
it's got me wishing these were all out on streaming or CD right now.
Look forward to that one coming up.
We have to wait. You made it sound very enticing. I'd really like to hear that work, actually. All right, just getting back to the first symphony. Earlier, you had mentioned that you have the whole orchestra and you want to use it all. And it seems to me that happens in the first symphony, if not as much in the fifth, and probably not in the others.
Yeah, that's true. I'm kind of eager to show
exactly.
off the first one.
There's a big bone quality to that. But then it goes into these really wonderful, like gentle, like metallic percussion sections. And I just found that really enchanting. I was just wondering what that evoked for you in that movement.
Let me think. Which movement are you talking about?
The first movement.
Yeah, the ending of the second theme, it has the tubular bells, and it has some other instruments. Yeah. There's a little bit of this, maybe could be we had very clearly, the churches ringing in my hometown.
Oh, nice. See, now I have to go back and listen again and think about
Could be something like this, or it's not the first time we have distant church bells, but Skellefteå is famous for its Christianity. There is when I went to, it's very Christian, it's very religious and very active in this, and also in the fields of more modern churches, like I don't know what you call them, but these free churches, not the state church, but I guess they're all imported from America, but they are very popular. and I remember being one of maybe we were 25 people in the gymnasium class, music gymnasium, and I was one out of 3 people not being active in any church. It doesn't say that I'm not believe in certain things, but I was not keen to take part in this. It was kind of everyone was in this little society, and it also I think I had quite perhaps I was quite lonely in a way up there, because it's even if I played ice hockey, and it was really a hockey town and in sports, and not many classical people really, and this can really make you stronger, or make you kind of, what do I want? It's not to be isolated can sometimes be a blessing. But of course, then I moved to Stockholm, I moved to Romania, I moved to Germany to study. I was in Finland. But at that time, maybe that was really something. I remember going into my little cave, music cave, and just creating music. And the world around me was really this winter and dark.
I see. Now, the third movement of this symphony has to do with a witch's Sabbath. And
yes.
An interesting thing to put into a Nordic symphony. Can you talk about that influence a little bit?
We believe, we celebrate a lot this with the witches, and it's also in the folk tales, in the myths.
Right.
We have belief in witches and trolls, of course, also all these kind of things in all times.
This is new to me.
You didn't know that it's very, very strong fairy tale stories about witches and trolls and elves.
Yeah.
We were always warned for this, to go close to any stream or river, because this guy was playing, and he was nude. He was playing the violin, very beautiful, to allure people to come into the river and drown.
I see.
And all the stories always has a darker side, you know. We were warned to go, because don't go to the forest, and you know, it's dangerous. Of course, maybe not my generation so much, but my mother's generation and before that, witches, and they really believed in that. And there's of course also good witches, but the ones I'm talking about is one riding on the broom, you know, and they have this fire dance around the fire. So that's a part of Nordic history.
That's a part of Nordic history I need to know a little bit more about. It's pretty interesting. Wow.
To create something that is not just, you know, sunshine and blue sky and, you know, lakes and forests, and, you know, there's also something contrasted.
Yeah, it made me think of Berlioz, of course, because he has that famous Witches' Sabbath in the Symphonie Fantastique.
Yeah, he does. I'm not influenced of that. I didn't think about that at all, but I know that there is some similarities.
Yeah, musically, I heard a lot of Stravinsky in that, though. There's a lot of sort of rhythm and percussive,
That theme, ba 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 ba, this main stage, you know, this little syncopian theme. And some of the things are very hard to play. It's hard when I notate it, because I kept notating many things. I did change, but in the original version, it's 2 tempi. You have one tempi 3/4, and you have another kind of tempi in 9/8, because you have this da 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 dum dum dum. This, and then it got da 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 da. But we renotated that, so it's all in 3/4. It was much easier. But the conductor it's not possible. I mean, it's possible, but it's very, very hard.
As a listener, I found that hard to follow, because I read that it was all 3/4, and it really, I really couldn't. I was having trouble counting it.
And I changed the notation because several parts before it was always offbeat. Ba, 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 ba. And for a classical musician, it's really hard when they have to play relaxed offbeat.
Right. Yeah.
Because it should sound ba, 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 ba. And then I did renotate some things on the beat, but some of the offbeat quality stayed. So it's a difficult movement. It's not easy to play.
Yeah, I can hear that. All right, now the Fifth Symphony is really a different animal altogether. It's not as big boned as the first. It seems more. Some of the instruments have been stripped away, and it's sort of I don't want to say more focused, but it's leaner, let's say. Yeah. Although I wouldn't exactly say it's lean. This says that it was dedicated to your mother.
Yes, because my third symphony is dedicated to my father. I see. And I need to have some fairness. And it also suits her personality. The third one is very joyful and open, and my father was quite happy. My mother is a little bit more introspective and troubled, maybe. But she's still living in Skellefteå. She's 90, and she's doing well by herself. But anyway, yes, the fifth symphony, I wanted to make it, to take away, as you said, leaner, to use only the things I really need. Right. It still has some bigger moments, and then I had this idea about, for the fifth one, to be like a concerto for orchestra. There's all players, like the tuba has quite much to do in the first movement, for example, and also woodwinds. They have challenging parts. So that's something, virtuoso for the orchestra. Maybe it doesn't sound very, very, but it is actually quite difficult. Some of the episodes, especially the first movement. The first movement loosely has a theme with variation, because the variations it's mixing and blending kind of organically. So you don't seamless, you said, you can say. That's why I say it's a little bit loose, because it's not like this. It starts and stops a little bit without one noticing it.
Is that the entire structure of the first movement, theme and variations?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. And then it ends at the last variation. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're back to the second movement, which is Russ had mentioned earlier, the jazz ballad that influenced this.
Yes, it's inspired by I had 3 cats before I really got allergic. Cannot have cats anymore. But I had a cat, all black, very big guy, but he had a very squeaky voice. Poor guy. And he was sneaking around. He had this way of sneaking around. And I wrote some pop songs. I also released some of them, but not this one. But it was called Silent Tale, because you could never hear him coming. And it was, but he was so big, so it was a wonder that you couldn't hear him. But he had a way to move around. And all these cats we had, this was when I was living in Stockholm, they were stray cats.
Right.
And so they came to us, and we had the last cat we had, I gave to my parents because I was traveling so much. He lived to be 20, and he was a great cat. But Ringo, he had a short and intense life, but he inspired me. So I use this ballad as a foundation, and then I add some things in the middle, but mainly it's the jazz ballad. Yeah, maybe it sounds strange. I don't know. It's like, but some people, if you think other symphonies, sometimes Brahms use folk music or Dvorak also. Jazz is a kind of modern folk music, or it's songs. It's this tune. It's quite simple, but I disguised it. There is one place that I particularly like, that I kept something. I don't know if you noticed that. There is one of the upbeats. I kept one of those bum 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 bum.
Okay, it's a long movement. I'll have to listen more carefully.
It comes in the original version much more often. Bum 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 bum.
Okay.
But I kept it once. It's very funny when it comes, because it's really the bass, boom 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 boom.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna have to put the headphones on and
check that
listen
again.
to that when we're done. So the influence of the Silent Cat is heard in the ballad, is what you're saying. The ballad really influences the movement. So the cat influenced the ballad, and then the ballad. Okay.
Absolutely.
I see. Okay, and it's been disguised, and we don't know what the original tune is.
No.
You make it really hard for us. It was a good movement, though. Are we going to be hearing any of your other symphonies on Naxos? Is this going to be part of a series?
I don't think so. I don't know. But at the moment, as I told you, we are recording the 6th concerto next week.
Yes.
And there's plans of playing my friend Joachim Gustafsson, the conductor for the other CDs. He's going to premiere the 7th Symphony and also the Divertimento in Colombia. And we are doing more and more collaboration with the Philharmonic Orchestra in Colombia. I did the Beethoven 4th Concerto and the Violin Concerto in version for piano with them. And then we are going to do all the 6 Beethoven Concerto with them. But we will also do some of my symphonies recorded there. I think that's the plan.
Great. So
it might be Naxos, it might be another label. I am not sure. And the 2nd Symphony, I would love to get it played. It's substantial, a big work. I already made an easier version. It's my friend Paul Mann, who is a great conductor, and he helps with the layout. He makes my scores. He said, this is really, Niklas, your music is generally not easy to play, but this is really on the edge, too difficult. So I might maybe reconsider. I think mainly my music is quite virtuoso to play. I don't know, it's my style. There is some a little bit more simpler stuff, but I think I also, I don't know, it's maybe my influence as a pianist that, I wanted to be lively.
Right. Well, the recordings that we heard on Naxos were beautifully performed. It's really pretty amazing for a new work to sound so well realized.
They had more time than usual. They had some extra time because when they recorded the first for Toccata Classics, that recording was like a normal recording, 3 days, and then they were really pressured to make it happen. And then now they had 5 days.
Oh, one more question. When you compose, do you compose on paper? Do you use a computer? Do you have software? How do you do that?
I have software. I have Sibelius.
Okay. Oh, the Sibelius software. I'm aware of that, yeah. Yeah,
I switched many years ago. I used to have Finale. Now I have Sibelius. And then I write also sometimes by hand, If it's something quick and it's my idea, it's much quicker to make it in pen and paper.
Just for listeners that might not know, Sibelius is a Besides being a Finnish composer, it's also the name of a music software program, a professional music software program, just so people know.
I wanted to ask you about a couple other interesting things you've done. In addition to all of the piano recordings you've done in your original compositions and now orchestral works, you've done these interesting little diversions from that area. And you mentioned going to China soon. And you did this recording in 2019, Continuum, with traditional Chinese instruments. I guess you could say focused on Oriental harmonies and things. And I listened to that. It's really interesting and dreamy recording. How did that come about? What's the genesis of that project?
I'm happy to hear that. This is a little bit forgotten recording. I don't know, because it was hard to place, what is it about? It's always you need to label things. And it didn't fit any good label. So it was a bit on the side. But I think it's a very interesting concept. I had this Confucius ensemble that played. We had a branch at the school in Copenhagen at the Royal Academy, and they had students from China, and we had also teachers for their traditional instruments. And we wanted to. The school had an idea to make a kind of more collaboration with the classical Western style and instruments. And we've done a couple of projects, and I had this idea. So I got a project. It was based on me teaching them kind of to improvise. They were already improvising, but we should improvise, on the spot and in the different styles. And so it's, they brought mostly, well, not only, but they stayed quite much in their own, the home territory, the Asian, the Chinese way to play. And I did a little bit, I took a little bit up that in my playing, but and then also I'm like a contrast. I play also Western harmonies, right. And also force them to, not force, but we should do this, and you should not stay only in that traditional. Do something quite modern. Some some clashes. We did that, and this is all spur in the moment. It's not composed. It's improvised. And then we had long sessions, and then we made an edit and took the best things out. And there's some exciting things going on.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting.
It's hard to label it, don't you think? What would you say? Which label would it be on? World music or classical or jazz or Chinese music?
Maybe it's more of a world music kind of thing. Their influence is strong, and, the modes they're using, you can tell that that's natural to them. But I was listening to what you're doing. It's kind of a bridge between Western and Asian
I
music.
think it was actually a very successful project, but it was hard to get this recording out to make people understand what is it about, and in China we presented it. Oh, this is not Chinese really.
Right.
It's exciting, but they didn't know what. So it's it ends up being a crossover. Yeah. But it can be. I think it's, as an experiment, it's really nice, and there's some very nice tracks there. But and of course this could have been a start of something long-term connection. And now they fortunately they have to cancel this department, so we don't longer have this affiliation with China in that sense at the academy. So that was like a starting point for something bigger, and I might try to pick it up. I actually have a new project. When you mention it, I'm in contact with a great tabla player, Indian player. She lives in Stockholm, and we had contact. She wanted to do something around Bach. It was my suggestion. We do some improvisation and something with the mixing Indian music and Bach. Oh, wow. But I haven't gotten around to that yet. Too many things always happening. Right. But I can say that I don't know by what other classical musicians generally feel about this, but I am very open-minded, and I'm really curious to try and even to fail, and to try something in this field. I also did a recording. Maybe you didn't see that one, but I did with a accordion player from his Serbian folk music.
We didn't find this one. I don't think.
No,
and with classical piano, and he also played. He played with He's a great guy. He played with Savinor, from Weather Report. He played with them.
Oh, wow.
But this is also something completely else, and people were, excited. But what is it?
What do we call it? Yeah, what's the label?
What is it? Is it jazz? This is leaning a little bit more towards jazz, actually.
Yeah, well, that's the other one I wanted to ask you about, the songs and collaborations recording.
Oh, really? You listened to that also?
I listened to that, and when I first heard it, I said, this is interesting because this is pop, but then there were two tracks that stood out to me. One was Swing It.
I actually went right to that one just because of the name.
Yeah, really some dense harmonies, jazz improvisation, and then Lost in Madrid, where you pull out the organ for a really great jazzy solo. So I thought, oh, that's really great. He's still doing some organ things.
Yeah. Okay, I tell you the story about that. I'm very happy that you have listened to that, because this is all old stuff. It was 2008. I wanted to make a pop album. I met a producer in Stockholm, and we talked about it. And we wanted to mix a little bit, have a lot of guest artists, famous names. And I wrote all the lyrics and I wrote the songs. Then it kind of came to a stop, and this producer disappeared, and I had this material for a long time that I didn't know what to do with. And this is only like a third of what I have. We recorded so many songs. Then I thought, I will make something out of it. I will make a mix. I will take some of the pop-like pieces, and the ice piano. This is from another composer, Fredrik Högberg, that also wrote Ice Concerto for me, that I played in Germany. And this orchestra and backtrack and video. The icebreaker, that's just the finale, the first piece, the first track. And then I took some of the best jazz pieces, some of the best songs, put it together for an album. And then I thought about it. I asked my wife, should I release this? I mean, I'm a classical pianist. This will, people will be very, I don't know. They think it's just not allowed to do that officially. And I was thinking I should do it under a pseudonym or call me something else, and just for the fun of it. And I think, no, this is good stuff. It's not bad. I just put it out there.
Yeah.
And then, I actually work on something not similar, but something with piano electronics now. But it's not pop as such. I want to have drums and bass. I want to do something mixing electronics and piano. Mm-hmm. So I guess I just feel that this is, for me, it's impossible to stay with one thing and exclude something because it's a different genre or something. If I feel I can say something in that genre, I will try. And I don't know, these pop songs, I think they're okay. I mean, it's very difficult to write. I wasn't trying to write any hits, it's just to take a very common structure. Then we put in one song, we put some flute and some recitation at last in French and these kind of things. And the structure of these songs I think there's not one normal song, maybe one. Mm-hmm. But today also pop is going a completely different way. It's just one harmony, it's just a rhythm.
Yeah.
But I grew up with Beatles and I liked Stevie Wonder. And this is what I was, before I even knew Mozart and Beethoven, I was inspired by them. Mm-hmm. Right. I played their songs. And now they are, of course, also classical. Beatles is like also classical. Right. You could almost release, as a classical pianist today, I could release a Beatles album on the piano. No one said, that's a good idea. I have a colleague in the conservatory, the academy. He's a great classical guitarist. He just released Beatles songs on the classical guitar.
Actually, a famous jazz pianist just released an entire album of Beatles songs. So.
Oh, really? I think times are changing. This, in the 90s or beginning of 2000, I was very careful with that pop album. I remember 2008. I thought I cannot release this because it will damage my reputation.
Yeah, that's sad. I think we're way too compartmentalized now, and I'd really like to see some of these barriers taken down. We're trying to do that actually on the podcast as well.
So I'm just waiting for Anders Schiff to release his next pop album.
Did you hear his most recent release? He played the Bach Inventions on
the clavichord.
On the clavichord, we just talked about that. That was a really interesting recording.
I really like him a lot because he's not, just come and doing all the time what's been done. He's experimenting. Of course, he's classical, all classical. But he's doing with, he did the Brahms concerto, on this other Bösendorfer or
right. We talked about that too.
Piano.
Yeah, we love this music that breaks boundaries. We did recently jazz saxophonist Charles Owens, and he did a recording of all pop songs that he grew up with hearing on the radio. He was about the same age as us, and he did a jazz version of Supertramp. And there was the Spinners, Could It Be I'm Falling in Love, and all these songs that we knew growing up in the 70s on the radio. And he turned them into jazz, and I thought it just worked out great. So I think crossing genres and using other material for ideas, it's great. And we should break out of these kind of stiff, genre defines and stuff. Yeah,
I'm trying to teach this to my students also, and then most of them are actually doing it. It's the times are really changing, and that's why you can have influences from any genre. It's just what you do with it. I remember when I was a student in Stockholm, and my teacher said, you must stop listening to Miles Davis all the time, listen to classical recording. It's boring. It's what I'm doing all the day playing. I want to hear some inspiring phrasing or something else.
Right.
It's the music. It's not the instrument. It was the music. I loved Davis, Miles Davis, the way he played. It inspired me. And it doesn't matter. I'm a pianist, but it doesn't matter. So I've listened to Keith Jarrett also, of course, but it's not about instrument. It's about the music making.
Right. In case you missed it, the jazz pianist that played the Beatles songs is Brad Meldau.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
The album's called Your Mother Should Know. You should give that a listen. It's really interesting.
He's famous, yeah. Great. Thanks for the tip.
Okay. Now, before we go, I just want to tell you one more thing. In Japanese, your name would be Niklas Sivelöv. Okay. I looked it up. So it'd be Shi at the beginning, Sivelöv.
Okay.
Or Sivelöv at the end. I don't know if they'd say the U.
Oh, it's close to the Chinese, Sivelöv.
Yeah.
Sivelöv.
They would say Fu at the end, though. Yeah,
okay.
This one. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for
thanks so much.
talking to us. This has been very enlightening. I'm going to put on the headphones now and listen to those symphonies again, I think.
Yeah, it was a great chat. Thank you for having me.
Look forward to the rest of those symphonies coming out in the next couple of years. And now we've got some things to listen for when we go back.
Right. That's always exciting for us. You just discover these new details. And because when we do new composers, you hear them once or twice and you're really not sure what they're after because they're all very different. And it's really hard to talk about it on the podcast.
How did you find the Naxos symphonies?
Well, I look for I found it on this one on the Presto website in England, and I'm always looking for just unfamiliar names in the classical music releases, so contemporary composers. In fact, we're going to do another one the week after the next week.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So I try to do as many contemporary composers as possible because I keep hearing how classical music is dead, and in fact, not many people listen to it, but people are still composing it, so I think we should be listening. Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm very happy. The German magazine Forum, they just wrote about this CD. Right. Very favorable. They're very enthusiastic about this. The same as you saying, it's Nordic, it's modern, but it's still accessible. Yeah. And it has, he also mentions Stravinsky and Sibelius, but still it doesn't overtake. The impression is that it's something.
And you got good performances and really good sound quality as well. They captured the engineers captured the orchestra exceptionally well. So it was a really good release. Yeah. So
yeah, that's great.
We're happy to have it.
Right. Well, for any of our listeners out there, I'll put links for that and the previous symphonies, also your concertos and a couple other albums in there so everyone can have easy access to check all of this out. If you haven't heard the podcast that we feature that in, I'll put that there too. And we'll all look forward to whatever comes out next. I especially want to hear that Symphony No. 2. So I hope that gets recorded sometime soon. It sounds really exciting.
Yeah, people could hear that podcast we did about your symphonies and hear how wrong I was in some of my analysis. That always happens, though. Yeah. You hear it once or twice, and then later on, you're like, oh, I didn't hear that the first time. I don't know. But that comes with the territory, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. So we look forward to a lot more and maybe talk to you again in the future. So thanks so much, Niklas.
Sure. Thanks.